lamped. We're live. Perfect. See? Way to drive us in. Good morning, everybody. We totally weren't doing anything awkward here. My name is Mallory Redmond. I am the, what am I? I was about to say co-pastor. What is that even? Campus pastor. I'm all disoriented because there was the singing and the clapping. I am the campus pastor here at City Church, where our purpose is to help people experience the fullness of God's love through relationship. Thank you to those of you joining us on Facebook. Glad you're here. We're early, a minute early, but you made it, and we're glad. Happy Easter. Growing up in my church, we would say, "He is risen." And then we would eat ham strata together. I'm glad those days are over, just the ham strata part. Okay, so I went off script a little bit, as I like to do. Originally I was going to start off our new series called Hesed, Love Without Limits. We were going to be in the book of Ruth. I'm not doing that today. We will have Pastor Charlie will start that series next week. You know, it's so predictable, and I hate being predictable, but I just can't get it away from a good resurrection story, you know? And if there's something that I feel like I can really talk about, it's death and life. And what an opportunity to be able to do that today. So I know probably what some of you are thinking, if you were here last week, is like, again with the feminine energy. I'm up 2 weeks in a row. What's with that? I mean, I just got to say, call Mary Magdalene what you want to call her, but she was there. She was present throughout the whole thing, and she shared the good word. And so, I don't know, I think it's a little bit appropriate to have a woman up here today on Easter Sunday sharing the good word. She honored death, that's for sure. And when you honor death, what I'm continuing to learn is that you're the first to see life. And so this morning, we are going to be in John 20. Gosh, I'm like so weepy. What an insane story that we get to return to today, but also that like we get to keep living out every single day. Like that is the invitation. It's our life is, I think if we're doing it right, it's a lot of little deaths unto greater life and greater life and greater life. And so this interaction that happens here in John 20 between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, I think it's kind of like a blueprint for how to live an abundant life. And fortunately and unfortunately, that means facing a lot of death and letting go of a lot of things, some of them really good things. So John 20, starting in verse 11. So setting the scene a little bit. Friday has passed. It's Saturday morning. Jesus is dead. She's going to the tomb. It says, Mary stood outside of the tomb weeping. As she wept, she knelt to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels sitting there, dressed in white, one at the head and the other at the foot of where Jesus' body had been laid. They said to her, "Woman, why do you weep?" "They took my master," she said, "and I don't know where they put him." After she said this, she turned away and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't recognize him. Jesus spoke to her, "Woman, why do you weep? Who are you looking for?" She, thinking that he was the gardener, said, "Sir, if you took him, tell me where you put him so I can care for him." Verse 16, Jesus said, "Mary." Turning to face him, she said in Hebrew, "Rabboni," meaning teacher. Jesus said, "Don't cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went telling the news to the disciples. "I saw the Master." And she told them everything he said to her. Okay, so Friday, we have Jesus' death, traumatic death. Saturday, nothing. It's just silence, right? Like she goes to the tomb, nothing. Sunday, so I'm sorry, this happened on Sunday. Sunday, he's saying, "Don't cling to me." Death, silence, don't cling to me. Happy Easter. I'm here to bring you this joyful news. Death, silence, don't cling to me. So this is so interesting to me. This verse, verse 17, Jesus said, "Don't cling to me." And there's a few different interpretations of this, but the Greek term for this, for cling or touch, covers a variety of meanings to include touching with the intention of holding on, or keeping something or somebody exactly where they are. And so, don't cling to me. He's essentially saying, like, don't keep me back. Don't keep me back. Like, things are not how they once were. I'm alive. I am here in the flesh, but things are not how they once were. And so you can imagine for Mary, this is an emotional, to say the least, experience. Like, she had already lost Jesus. She had seen his incredibly gruesome death, had no idea what the future held or what to expect or what to anticipate. And so, of course, she would want to keep things as they were. Like, let's return to, like, you're alive, that's great. Now let's return to how things were. Like, let's continue on with life. I see, like, you've resurrected, like, miracle, amazing. Okay, let's continue. And Jesus is saying, don't cling to me. Like, things are different now. The resurrection has changed things. So I've thought a lot about this, right? Like, about this, don't cling to me. And this is an image. This is me, wild and free. Cannot imagine doing this. I get sick sitting in the backseat of a car now. So can't imagine doing this these days, but this is me. I'm bungee jumping. And so this is kind of the image I get of clinging, because it's not like Jesus is saying, like, we're done, you're cut off. But it's more of a tethering, right? And so that's kind of like the clinging versus tethering. Clinging would be like taking the elevator down, right? Like, I'm going to hold on, and like, you are going to take me where I need to go. And this tethering, where it's like, we're connected, right? Like, we're very much connected. We are safe, we are held, we are connected. But like, he wants us to go. He wants us to jump. He wants us to run and tell people and do our thing and like live this life that he has created for us, like, abundantly. And so the Spirit allows us to remain tethered to the Lord, like indescribably connected, while being sent out to the world. Tell the disciples this. Tell them that I did this. Share this. To bring light and life and love to other people. So Richard Rohr, who we bring up his words a few times, he says, Jesus is saying, don't hold on to the past, what you think you need or deserve. We are all heading for something much bigger and much better, Mary. This is the spiritual art of detachment, which is not taught much in the capitalistic worldview, where clinging and possessing are not just the norm, but even the goal. In her desire to cling to Jesus and his refusal to allow it, we see ourselves reflected as in a mirror. We are shown that eventually, even the greatest things in our lives, even our loves, must be released and allowed to become something new. There was a greater story that was unfolding here, and it was one of life and growth and empowerment and expansion and transformation. It wasn't just that Jesus died and then came back and like life carried on. Like, he was empowering Mary. He is empowering us, and he's saying, like, things were good and they're about to get a whole lot better. But it's going to be different than what you had known. I'm not going to be walking the earth like I once was. Like, it's like the show is yours. Like, take it and run with it. Things are going to be different. But he's not abandoning them. He wasn't abandoning Mary. He's not abandoning us. It's an empowerment thing. So because of Jesus, death precedes life, not the other way around, which is how we often want to think about it. And so there's death, there's silence, there's do not cling. Death, silence, do not cling. But here's the thing. He is not forsaking you. He's freeing you. He's freeing you up. He's freeing you to experience newness and growth and a bigger story. He's freeing you up to expand, to live a bigger life than the one that you thought was possible. And it's super scary, right? Like, imagine what Mary must have been thinking when he said, like, don't cling to me. Like, all of the things that must have been going on in her head as she starts to understand, like, okay, you're here, you're risen, you're alive, but things are different, and I don't know what different looks like, and that's kind of scary. When I was about to graduate from graduate school, get my master's degree, like, eyes on the prize the whole time. It's all on graduation day, right? Like, I still remember mine, June 27th. Like, I was always counting down until that day. And then that day comes, and it's like, I don't want this to happen. Like, I don't want to leave the nest. What do you mean? Like, this was a really sweet season. Like, we had good times, and so you're grieved, and you're scared, and you're not sure what's to come. Like, this is the kind of thing that is being illustrated in this story. Is that Jesus is, to some effect, saying, like, you're up. Like, yes, you're still following me, but we're also a team. And it might feel like you're being sent out into the world, like, completely untethered on your own. But really, like, we're doing this thing together. I'm freeing you to do greater things than even I did. I think a lot about this level of hope that Mary had to have, that we are called to have, and it's anticipatory versus participatory. I can still remember the intersection that I was in Glen Ellen, Illinois, when I was in driver's ed, so I'm behind the wheel, and I have my teacher next to me, and for whatever reason, I did not slow down when there was a red light, like very basic, like driving law. And I was not slowing down, and I don't know what was happening for me, but eventually the driver or the teacher freaked out enough that he pumped on his little emergency brake and, like, saved all of our lives. And that's the kind of level of hope. That's kind of the way that I think about it, is like the driver was anticipating, like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I can see the light is red, and I'm going to stop the car. And then he realized, like, oh, actually, I got to step in and participate here. Like, I have a job to do here to keep all of us alive, so I'm going to pump on the brake. And that's the kind of thing that we're being called into, is like Mary was like anticipating all that Jesus could and would do. And then Jesus comes to her and says, like, and you're going to do it with me. Like, you're participating with me. You're in this with me. So rather than, like, clicking your heels 3 times with your ruby red slippers, put your cleats on. Get out on the field. Death and resurrection are not just things that we witness or that we celebrate or that we toast to over brunch. Like, we are an active part of it. We are participants in this. And it's super uncomfortable, right? Like, I just want to sit in the back seat and, like, trust that the driver's got it. And really the driver's saying, like, hey, we're in this together. What are you going to do? Where are you going to take us? Pump on the brake, pump on the gas. Like, what do we need? Let's do this together. And so what does it look like to embrace loss and life? I think this story in John 20, the Easter story, gives us kind of a template for experiencing necessary loss unto greater or more abundant life. And so we start on Friday, right, where loss feels final. And with all my feminine energy, I'm bringing feelings back into the church. And so you start feeling like overwhelm or denial or anger or despair. Like, what is it that's being crucified? Right, on Friday, we see our Savior is being crucified. What is on the cross for you today? A dream, a relationship, your health, your financial security, your job, your theology, your idea of what you thought your life was going to look like? Like, if we're all being our most honest selves, there is something being nailed to the cross for you, probably in this season of life, and how wrong and unfair and unbearable that feels. To have to sit at the foot of the cross and see this thing that you have to give up, that you do not want to give up. Death feels that way. It feels final. It feels unbearable. It feels unfair. It feels overwhelming. But he's not forsaking you. He's not forsaking you in death. He is setting you up for more. Something has to be given up in order for us to receive. Letting go of what was creates space for what will be. And so Mary had to let go of her idea of who Jesus was to create space for who he was going to be, who he is, the things that he could do in and through her. She had to let go of her old ideas, her old understandings. And we are continually called to do the same thing, to put onto the cross old ideas, old understandings, things that just have kind of run their course in order to create space for what the Lord wants to do next in our lives. And so we cry, oh my God, why are you forsaking me? Why do I have to put that thing up on the cross? Why do I have to put that person up there, that idea, that dream? Why are you forsaking me? And he's not forsaking you. He's freeing you. One of my favorite parts about John 20 is in verse 16 when Jesus says, Mary. Like she's confused and she's lost and she's disoriented and she doesn't understand and she thinks that she's talking to a gardener, and all of a sudden he says, Mary. And it just clicks for her. Pay attention when the Lord full names you. Like he wasn't like Mare, Bear, girl. When people say Mallory to me, it freaks me out. Because I'm Mal. And so when they say Mallory, it's like, what did I do? What do you know? I'm sorry. Pay attention. When God says your name, that's all it took. Mary. And she was known. And she was seen. She was oriented to her surroundings. I love that it's not like a question. Mary? Mary, period. Like a doctor walking into the room. I hate when the doctor walks into the room and he's like, Mallory, you need to know who I am. Like, I need you to know that my name is Mallory. I do not need you asking me. I need you to know who I am. Jesus says, Mary. That's all it took. He sees her in a world that had been pitch black. How good does it feel to be seen and to be known when you are scared half to death and you cannot find your way and you are in the bowels of grief? And for Jesus to just say, Mary, I see you. I see where you are. I see how you're feeling. I am right here. He responds with our name, and if that doesn't free you of something, I don't know what will. For Jesus to see you in the darkest parts of where you are and to just say your name. That's not forsaking you. He's freeing you. He's starting to loosen you for what he has for you. Letting go of what was, leading us to let go of what was to create space for what will be. So then we go to Saturday. Gosh, I have this love-hate relationship with Saturday. Because silence that follows grief or is in the midst of grief just feels kind of cruel, you know? But I think what I'm learning is that there is a time for tombs. There's a time for graveyards. There is a time to sit outside of the tomb of what was and to weep and to honor it. People a lot of times might tell you to stay away from tombs, like that's death. Stay away from tombs. You can't avoid death. Are you kidding me? And so I think it's necessary to pause and to grieve and to honor what was. Because ultimately, in the kingdom with Jesus, a coffin becomes like a cocoon, where it's temporary and it's forming you into what you will be and who you will be and what you will do. And it's the place out of which you will bear witness to what was, and you will reemerge for what will be. But the tomb is where things get a little bit tricky, because I think tombs can get pretty comfortable. And so the loss, whatever the loss is, may not have been our choice, but what we do with it and what we do in the tomb is our choice. And so Mary went to weep and to wrap Jesus' body in spices and perfumes as a way to honor him. But I don't think she ever intended to just sit there and stay there until she died her earthly death. And so what do you do when you're staring death into the face? You know, a lot of the disciples got scared and they locked themselves up in a room. And that's one of the reasons I love Mary Magdalene, is because she's like, I'm going to go and bear witness. I'm going to go and stare grief down into the face, and I'm going to honor it, and I'm going to care for it, and I'm going to tend to it. I was recently telling a friend of mine about an Easter a few years ago. That was when I was in the bowels of grief from a lost relationship, and my tomb held a whole lot of tears and anger, rage, too much wine. Fear will fasten us into tombs. And so while I think that they are necessary places, and this Holy Saturday would not be a part of the story if we were meant to just jump through the grief and go right into the celebration. So Holy Saturday is a message to us that grief is meant to be honored and loss is meant to be met, and we are supposed to sit with it and to be with it and to feel it. But the tomb can get really, really comfortable, and it can become like a little living room for us where we just stay because we're too scared of what will be, and we want what was. And so we just stay there for our whole lives until we're taken up to heaven, and we miss out on all that the Lord had for us. So there is a time for tombs, and you will feel disoriented, and you will feel like the Lord is saying nothing, not even your name. And you might feel shame, and you might feel heartache, and you might feel confused, and you might feel disoriented, and you might feel like the whole world is just pitch black. But I think it's a call to honor what was, the goodness and the heartache of what was, because it is in the cocoon that looks like a coffin where you are being prepared for what will be. Even in the grief, he's not forsaking you. He's setting you up for more. He's preparing you. And grief and loss and shock can sometimes really blind us. I remember when my grandmother passed away, and you're just so disoriented. And so we were going to the funeral home, and we drove past the graveyard, and my mom, we thought that they dug up the wrong grave where they were going to place my grandma's coffin. And so I am in the cemetery in the middle of February in Missouri in my black dress and heels, and I'm running through the cemetery to make sure that they dug up the right grave for my grandma's coffin. Grief does really strange things to you, and it makes you worried about strange things and see strange things. And so Mary's there, and she's in the garden, and she's like, "You're the gardener. You must be the gardener." So disoriented. But letting go of what was allows us to see the Lord in new ways. She wasn't looking for him. Of course she thought it was the gardener. She didn't think that Jesus would be there, alive in the flesh. Oftentimes, I think we have the opportunity to see a lot more of him in the midst of our grief and heartache than we let our eyes see. because maybe our situation is too chaotic or too ugly, or we've created too much of a mess, and so it's like there's no way that the Lord is here. One of my favorite writers, Jen Hatmaker, she talks about a difficult season that she has gone through, and the ways that she would just kind of explain things away. Like, your best friend calls you at exactly the right time, just when you need to hear from them. It's just the gardener. Or somebody gives you a meal when you can't handle cooking for your family. It's just the gardener. Or your kid sleeps through the night before you have to preach 2 sermons on Easter. It's just the gardener. And that didn't actually happen. And we explain things away, and it's like, no, he hasn't forsaken me. It's not the gardener, it's Jesus. And if I pause long enough and I listen closely, he's also saying my name. It can feel so silent, and it can feel so scary that there is no way that the God of the universe is there in that tomb with you. And so if it looks like the gardener, it looks like the gardener, but maybe it's him. Maybe it's Jesus joining you in the depths of your grief and your despair. And maybe in joining you, he's freeing you. He's setting you up for more. He's preparing you for what will be. Because he sure has not forsaken you. Oh, thank God for Sunday. Enough of the crying. Is this like the most depressing Easter message you've ever heard in your life? There's a reason for that. And it's because we can all come here and we can wear dresses and we can go to brunch and we can do Easter egg hunts and we can take pictures, but it's like, how many of us actually really feel like we're in the Sunday right now? I don't know. Maybe you do. But I know a lot of people who are in Friday and Saturday. And maybe this will be the only Easter sermon I ever preach, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to say, like, I see you. I know that some of you are in Friday and Saturday, and so we can come and we can celebrate Sunday. Of course we can celebrate Sunday. Thank God for Sunday. It makes me cry. But Friday and Saturday are pretty real. And I think this story shows that, like, we're meant to honor them. We're meant to speak to them. They're meant to be a part of the story. So anyways, we're in Sunday. Hallelujah. Death was just the opening act. And I know that sounds a little bit morbid, but it's like, it's a part of it. And you know what? The story's just getting started. When the death happens, like, that is the beginning. A new show is starting. It was a long pause. It was a long pause. It was an awkward pause. But it's not an ending. I was driving this week somewhere, doesn't matter where, and I saw a car accident on the side, like pulled off onto the side of the road. And because it was on the side of the road, I'm like, okay, like it's old, you know, like they've already gotten it taken care of, like they've pulled off to the side of the road. And as I'm driving past this car, this guy gets out of the driver's door, and he's covered in blood, and his airbag was deployed. Like, this was fresh. This had just happened. And so I'm watching, like, all of this unfold and, like, making sure everything's okay, and somebody's calling 911 and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. I think because it was like I was a witness to this moment that I know for those, like, 3 or 4 people, like, was really marked for them. I haven't been able to forget it. And I just think about, like, that moment that I witnessed, like, that was the beginning, like, that was the reemerging of something new for those people. Like, for those people, there's life before the car accident, and there's life after the car accident. Like, new life was coming, and, like, nobody wanted that. Nobody wants new life to start with a car accident. But, like, something new was being birthed. And it's going to be really annoying. There's going to be hospital bills and car insurance and all of that stuff. But, like, a new season was beginning for them, whether they wanted it or not. Life follows loss. Like, new life is what's next. Like, that was a terrible accident, and it was horrible, and nobody wants that. But it's like, okay, that happened. Like, something died in that moment. Not a person, thank God, but something was lost. And so new life is emerging. They didn't ask for it, but here it is, and it's theirs for the taking. That's just the opening act. But hear me say this. Resurrection is not a return to normalcy. Resurrection is not a return to normalcy. And I think it's so, like, I don't know, that's hard for me to remember. It's like, oh, okay, Jesus is resurrected, he's alive again, let's continue. And it's like, no, everything changed. Everything changed for the better, but it's super uncomfortable. It's the inbreaking of something new. Jesus did not go to the cross for stagnancy. Jesus went to the cross for newness, for new life. And so if we experience death and then we experience resurrection and expect everything to be exactly the same, it's like, what did he go to the cross for? He did not go to the cross for stagnancy. It's about revolution, inbreaking of new life. I have an April baby, Evie. She turns 3, and on April 12th, she'll tell you. And I think about just the wild birth process and the pain and the waiting of childbirth. And oh my gosh, the pain, like, it's just indescribable pain. And I remember at one point being like, actually, I'm good. Like, I'd like to know her, but like, I'm good. Like, I'd like to actually just kind of remove myself from this situation because it's far too painful. But then she came, and oh my gosh, it felt like Sunday. Like, I could see her. Like, her face was clear. It was no longer this, I wonder what she's going to look like. I could see her, and I could touch her. And I had this sense of urgency at my new purpose in life, mothering this girl. I remember I just walked the hospital room with her saying, Mommy loves you. Mommy loves you, I do. And I'd never heard myself call me mom before. And after what felt like so much death and so much darkness and so much waiting and so much pain, it was like, whoa, she's here. Like, new life literally has begun. The inbreaking of resurrection requires change that subverts, transcends, and abandons that which we think of as normal and comfortable, but only so that we can enter into new life, which is fuller, all-enfolding, redemptive, and unifying. The fullness of all that life was meant to hold could not be realized if Mary demanded that life return to normal. Sometimes a really good thing has to die so that a greater and more expansive thing can come to life. And Jesus makes this true and real and possible. So if we're doing it right, our life is going to be filled with a lot of tiny deaths rather than one big death that sends us to the tomb until our earthly body dies. It's going to be a lot of little tiny deaths and then re-emerging and more abundant life and tiny deaths and more abundant life. Gosh, it's so hard. And it's so painful. And it's so freaking glorious. I can hardly stand it. He is not forsaking you. He's just freeing you. He's not forsaking you in new life. He is freeing you to go live it abundantly. That's what the cross was for. More abundantly. Bigger, better than we could ever imagine or hope for. In verse 17, he says, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them, I ascend to my Father and your Father, my God and your God." So Mary Magdalene went. So Mary Magdalene went, because of course she did. She's Mary Magdalene. The instruction was to go and tell others. Like, how vital community is cannot be understated in this. And I think it could be easily missed because I'm not completely, like, capitalizing on it, but like we find and we keep Jesus in and with community with others. We tell others about him. We are him to others, bringing light, life, and love to those in our community. And like the beauty of the empowerment that Jesus is bestowing upon us is like, I don't even have words for it. The Spirit inside of us is Jesus to the world. Like, go, tell the disciples everything that I told you. You're Jesus to the world now. I don't have to be here anymore. You're Jesus to the world. We're tethered, but don't cling to me because you've got it in you. It's in you. Go tell the disciples everything that I told you. This is what God says. The God who builds a road right through the ocean, who carves a path through pounding waves, the God who summons horses and chariots and armies. They lie down and then can't get up. They're snuffed out like so many candles. Forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert, be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the badlands. Wild animals will say thank you. The coyotes and the buzzards, because I provided water in the desert, rivers through the sun-baked earth, drinking water for the people I chose, the people I made especially for myself, a people custom-made to praise me. Isaiah 43. He's doing a new thing. Can't you see it? You know who hates newness? Comfortable people in cozy tombs. They hate new things because it's super uncomfortable. Don't you see it? I'm doing a new thing. Okay, so a couple of reminders for the resurrection because I'm a very practical-minded person, so I'm like, okay, I hear you, I see you, now tell me what you're actually saying. So a couple of reminders, and then we're going to get out of here. Recognize and release. What are you clinging to that needs to be let go of? What thought about yourself or others? What idea? What relationship? What job? What responsibility? What heartache? What shame? What belonging? If you can't handle death, you're going to have a really hard time with resurrection. And so we name it. And how do you know? How do you know what needs to be let go of? Well, either it's going to be taken from you and you're not really going to have a choice, or you'll see it gasping for breath, you'll know. Because guess what? He's in you. He's in you. And so you listen for him. You listen for what he's saying to you, what he's leading you to do. So you not only recognize that thing, but you release it. It's way easier to type that than to do that. Way easier to say it than to do it. But these are just little reminders for resurrection. Remember, oh my gosh, I just love Mary Magdalene's presence in this story. And like I said, I think that we are shown that. We are shown the silence and the grieving because we are called to do the same. And so honor it, whatever it is. Bring perfumes and spices to the grave of what was. And let yourself feel it. Let yourself grieve it. And then you refocus and you run towards, now what is? That's what was. What is? What is he leading you to? What's he telling you to go do? Mary Magdalene ran. She ran to go tell the disciples. And so this is the action item. What's next? This is the new life that we're being called to. And you might not feel much like my graduation. It's okay, I'm going to go because that's the right thing to do, and also you're kicking me out of the school, but this is the new thing. This is the thing that we're being called to that is going to bring us more abundant life, unto more abundant life, unto more abundant life. And people might think that you're crazy. That's great. You want to be seen as crazy. That means you're probably doing something right. Because God's not boring and God's not stagnant, and so let people think that you're crazy. And finally, we get to rejoice in all of it, in all of it. And you might not always feel like rejoicing, but there is a reason to rejoice. Where do you see the gardener? What's the gardener up to today? How's he saying your name today? Is there an exclamation point? Mallory. We get to rejoice in all of it. Death is not the end of the story. Never has been. Not the end of the story. He's making all things new. He's making all things new. He's making all things new. And you get to be a part of it. You get to be a part of it. Hallelujah. He's not forsaking you. Didn't forsake Jesus on the cross. Freedom. He's not forsaking you now. He's freeing you. He's loosening you up for what's next. More life. Bigger life. More abundant life. That is something that I will toast to over brunch. We're going to take a couple of minutes, and we're going to ask ourselves the question, Lord, what are you saying to me in light of what I've heard this morning? What are you calling me to do? Where are you leading me? What are things that are has-beens that I'm trying to fit into is or will be's? Where do I need to let go? What image of you do I need to let go of so that you can wow me? How am I keeping you in a box? What are you saying to me in light of what I've heard this morning? And then we'll have Leslie come up and close us out.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mallory. The part where you were saying just dying little deaths often, dying to yourself those little deaths to avoid, what the Lord has saved us from. That's such a good reminder. It reminds me of when I was pregnant. Mallory always says, parenting gives us such good stories for this, and it's really true. There was a song that I used to sing to myself when I was feeling very melodramatic. That just says, I die to myself and I live for you, Lord. And so when I was in such pain or when I was in labor, I would sit there and go, and I die to myself and I live for you. And it's very melodramatic, but it's such a good reminder of in that pain, whatever it is that the Lord's doing, it serves a purpose. And we are dying to ourselves for greater life, for that resurrection life. So thanks for that reminder, Mal. I have some announcements for us today before I send you onto your plans. Every Wednesday night we have prayer night. This has very quickly become my favorite thing that we do. Really, really invite you guys to come, even if you've never done it before. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m., we have child care for those under the age of 5, and kids 5 and older are welcome to join us in here. It always looks a little bit different, but the Lord always meets us here, and it's always really powerful. So I invite you to that. Next up, we have new initiatives. The first one, Taste and See, is full, but the other two, there's still room for you. We have trail running, which starts this week, meeting up at the reserve to do some outdoor running. If you love running, this is for you. If you don't love running and need accountability, this is for you. And then a family and friend meetup in the park. This is going to be something that happens regularly, but this is just the first monthly one. So to sign up for those, you can go to the website under initiatives and see all of those there. Make sure you do sign up. That way you get important updates about when and where they're meeting. And then finally, giving. Your giving is so important to us. It allows us to do what we do here and what we feel the Lord is calling us to do. So you can text to give to that number. You can also give on the website. There's a little giving tab up at the top. And then we also have buckets in the back. Also, if you're new with us today and you received a connection card, you can turn that in back there. Or there's also some more in the back that you could fill out as well and put in that black bucket on your way out. And that's it. For today, there are no breakouts. We usually have breakouts after this on Sunday. There are not today. So don't go sitting in the cafe waiting for it to start. Pick up your kids. Remember that. But then you guys are done. That's all for us today. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you decided to spend Easter with us. Those of you on Facebook Live, we're so glad you tuned in. We are back to one service next week at 9 a.m. So we'll see you then. Have a happy Easter.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for participating in our conversation with your comments and your questions. As always, we would love it if you would share the link to today's message. If you need anything, you want to know more about who we are, you can visit our website at citychurchdayton.com or send us an email to info@citychurchdayton.com. Have a great week.